Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today as we kick off Selma Week, the Selma to Montgomery March, which gave us the Voting Rights Act. Boy, there were a lot of activities that led to this march, and actually, it was three marches, three, and it was a protracted struggle, and people died. Rather, people were killed. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a World War II veteran, killed trying to vote, just trying to get registered to vote and organizing people. Well, he was killed. And then people came down. Reverend James Reed left his wife and little babies up in Boston, a white minister. He was beaten to death, organizing, coming down to march because he saw what had happened at the bridge with John Lewis, and he said, just, I can't not be here. I must go there. He was beaten to death. Viola Liuzzo, a Detroit mother, the wife of a union rep, white woman, Italian American woman, mother of 5 children, was so compelled by what she had seen. She said, not only am I going to go to march, I'm going to go and volunteer. She got down there and she said, tell me, what is it that I can do? And they said, well, you can drive people to the airport and just drive people around. And that was really dangerous duty, but she was willing to do it anyway. And after the march, when people were excited about having had a successful march, when she was driving back from the airport, she was killed, shot to death on the highway. A lot of blood was shed, and that compelled Lyndon Baines Johnson, President Johnson, just months into his full term, to say we shall overcome and we will have voting rights. And he pushed and pushed and pushed to get the Voting Rights Act. My point in sharing just that brief overview, because there's so many other people, nameless, faceless people you don't know who were involved in that. Starting with Mrs. Amelia Boynton, who called Dr. King and said, you've got to come down here. We are having a hard time trying to vote. Well, as we looked at Blackout Friday, as exciting as that was, and from what we can understand, it was successful. And a lot of people are trying other ways to resist. Terry O'Neill, former national president of the National Organization of Women, we heard you yesterday when you were saying there's so much more to this. I applaud what happened on Friday, but people, you've got to learn how to organize. And organizing is not easy. You've got to build consensus. You got to talk to people. It's not as easy as it looks. It's much more than marching. Marching is a culminating event. So I said, let me call her back, because I could see your, not frustration, but your eagerness to really conduct a seminar. So I also pivoted to, you've been a coach of mine. Well, my father has a coach, had a coach, Coach Mathis, who really shaped his life. My father was always looking for father figures, and one who stands head and shoulders above all others was Coach Mathis. He talks about him. My father's 83 now. He talks about him today. Well, he ended up coaching his daughter into civil rights, who's now coaching me in my life. And of course, she has headed up the National Council, the Conference of Negro Women. But guess what? She says she's going to retire. But you and Terry O'Neill, you can never retire, Attorney Janice Mathis, because it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. You never retire from civil rights. And we dedicate the show today to Hazel Jukes, the longtime head of the NAACP in New York. She was 92. She never missed a protest. More than that, she never missed an opportunity to meet and organize and to get young people and older people and everybody involved. We cannot miss Hazel Jukes because she is still with us and she always will be. But I dedicate the show to her today during Women's History Month, because This is someone who stands tall in our forest, so strong and so tall. They wrote about her in The Guardian today, in the international papers, because she has been ubiquitous. Wherever there was a need, wherever there has been a struggle, Hazel Jukes has been there, and we thank God for her life. And we hope that she's resting in heaven, but I doubt it. She's organizing up there. People like that, that's what they do. Let me start with you, Janice Mathis, because we heard from you yesterday, Terry, about your thoughts about this blackout. Attorney Janice Mathis, who, of course, had been vice president also of Rainbow Push, and she's been legal counsel to Reverend Jackson. Um, she's done so much, and NCNW is not going to let you retire. Reverend won't let you retire. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. So, Attorney Janice Mathis, the the blackout on Friday. In Chicago, for example, many people did not go shopping on Amazon. They did not go to Target and to the big box stores. And if you wanted to go to a black restaurant, the lines were down the block. So that's good news. But you and Terry have said there's so much more to this. And there's so much more that we have got to do. Attorney Mathis.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's always a joy to be with you. I tend to think of you as a teenager or a young college student, and I know you're so much more than that, so talented and so gifted, and you too have been coached into the movement. But I do want to say something about what you said about marching being a culminating event. I think that marching gives us a reason to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Organizing a big, significant march gives you a focal point. It gives you usually an issue that you're trying to push. For me, the seminal march was a march to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. We called it Keep the Vote Alive. And several tens of thousands of people marched down through the center of Atlanta, not knowing whether or not President Bush at the time would sign the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. But he did. And what I remember about that time was the cohesion that it required of us, that we forget whatever partisan or organizational divides there were, but to come together around this larger goal. There was a tremendous amount of satisfaction in knowing that we contributed in the way that we could to making that happen. Of course, a few years later, the Voting Rights Act was decimated, and so there was the work to be done all over again. And if there is a downside to being an activist, it is that every generation has to reiterate its commitment to justice and equality, because we tend to see these ebbs and flows.
So tell me, I mean, I saw in one of the headline pieces about Blackout Friday, the question was, is a 24-hour boycott enough?
No.
Does it have any impact?
It may have some impact. It may have some impact on the people who operate Target, their customers and their employees. And it will have some short-term impact on the customers who participated in, or the activists who participated in. But you know what it reminds me of? The Montgomery bus boycott. And I wasn't there. I was 3 years old, I think, at the time. But what they wondered was, would people really stay off the buses? And would they stay off the buses long enough to make a difference? They ended up staying off those buses for a year. And that, for me, was a lesson in the kind of perseverance and dedication that it takes to be an effective social justice advocate. One day of Target, not shopping at Target, won't do it. But maybe 365 days would have an impact.
Do you think that, I mean, there were certain social conditions in which we had the Montgomery bus boycott?
Yes.
Post World War II, you know, Black people, Terry, as history tells us, had to be coaxed into going to the Second World War as soldiers, not because we're not patriotic, but because coming out of slavery and Reconstruction and coming through and still living under Jim Crow, apartheid in America, Black people said, wait a minute, you want me to fight to free people in Europe and I'm still in bondage here? I don't think so. So after much convincing, Black people said, okay, we'll go, but we'll have a double V campaign, victory at home and victory abroad. And so when Black people came home, and my grandfather, for example, came through New York, and when they got to Washington, the Black soldiers had to move to the colored train, and the Nazi POWs were moved into their seats.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then many of them had to go work for Nazi POWs.
Mhm.
There's a book, Hitler's American Model, that says that many of the Nazi POWs were appalled at the treatment of Black people. They said, we didn't even treat Jewish people this bad in
Mhm.
Germany. It was like they said, we've never seen anything quite like this. And so there was a real push. Janice, I'm going to pivot to you, Terry, because Terry is such a student of history. Do you think that, I mean, so it was in that context, Brown v. Board of Education, so Emmett Till's murder, and on and on and on, that we had that massive boycott in Montgomery, and others that were springing up all around the country. Many people don't report that. Do you think that we're there now, Janice? I know it's a different day, right? But are there any similarities?
Between Montgomery and what we're going through now?
Or just the context, when you see the anxiety, or I mean, should I say, really, the the push to resist? Because I think that's the better way to put it, Terry. Because Black people were resisting. They resisted apartheid in America. They were resisting. Is that there now, Janice?
Absolutely. What we're seeing among our members, there are about 300 chapters of NCNW. We call them sections all over the country. I think we're in about 35 states. And every day we get calls and letters from our members across the country who want to know, what can I do? Should I march with AFT? Should I boycott Target? Should I switch to Costco? There is a lot of pent up energy around doing something. And it's not just confined to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. It is what people see as an attack on the underpinnings of our way of life, if you will.
Mm.
Or as much as African Americans have been excluded from our way of life, we are still very patriotic. We believe those things that the founding fathers, we believe what Jefferson wrote and what he said about people being created equal. We're the eternal optimists. And so people want to do something. I spent most of today crafting a message having to do with what we expect to be the State of the Union address tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Not stepping across the 501c3 nonpartisanship line, but being honest and factual with our audiences so that they know that we have not sold them out. We have not taken the easy way out. We understand that there's still issues to be addressed. So yes, especially among our young folk, the fervor is there. It's, is there anything that can be effective in this environment? That is the issue. Will the courts hold? Will the Congress stand up? Will people persevere? Those are the kinds of questions we're hearing, not whether or not the moral case has been made.
Attorney Terry O'Neill, now I got a fusillade of questions for you. And I want you all to feel free to engage one another, because
Me and Terry go back a long way too.
I know, right?
I mean, and I think people need to know that, because of the work that you've done down through the years, Attorney Janice Mathis, but also because of the work that Attorney Terry O'Neill, and this, her push for intersectionality,
Exactly.
has been, quite frankly, unique in movements that white women have led. But then I know we have always had great relationships with Now. I mean, we just have. And it didn't just happen. I think that, many of our allies and Now acknowledged openly Reverend's advocacy of women.
Mhm.
Were it not for Reverend and his advocacy and his candidacy, you would not have had a Geraldine Ferraro, because that was something that the eventual nominee he would never commit to it. It was Reverend who committed to coming out of the gates. I'm going to have a woman on the ticket. And he challenged all of the other candidates to do that, and they would not commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Attorney Terry O'Neill, what do you make of Friday? And we're hearing a lot of questions about, like, Chappelle. Let me just go to her. She said, "Where is now?" Terry, you need your job back because they are too silent. Only Chappelle would say this. So heaven help her. Oh my God. Well, it's a challenge, but it is a challenge because Janice Mathis just said we're trying to reassure our people that they've not been sold out. Because many people see people in leadership and they're asking, what are you doing? So what about now? I mean, and because now, no pun, people are saying, okay, white women voted for Trump.
Exactly.
Now, you can't carry the yoke of all white women because no one was as hard in the paint for Kamala as you have been. And you kept warning us, this is where white women are going to go. These are some things we need to do to avoid this. I wish people had listened to you more closely. Terry O'Neill.
Yeah, I think, let me just say that the president of now, who was elected going on 4 years ago, Christian Nunes, is a young Black woman. And I think she's really doing an amazing job. And she is actually building on the intersectionality of now that I did my part of getting now to commit to intersectionality in its statement of purpose, and then, trying to put it into effect on the ground. Christian has recently organized a loose coalition, if you will, or an sort of an alliance of organizations, including NOW and an organization called One Fair Wage, which advocates for ending the $2.18 minimum wage for tipped workers. Right, and advocates for tipped workers having the same minimum wage as everybody else. This is dramatically important for women because women cluster right in service jobs that involve a lot of which involve tips. Hotel cleaners, obviously restaurant workers and bartenders and so forth. That's where women really tend to cluster in the job market. And other organizations as well, to raise the alarm about what Trump is doing specifically to Title VII and to the 14th Amendment that Title VII is based on. Right, Title VII.
Now, what is Title VII?
Sorry, yeah, that's the federal law that prohibits workplace discrimination on the basis of race, religion, national origin, and sex. And it had already been drastically really defanged over the past 30 years or so. But Christian is leading this sort of sound the alarm with this new administration in place and the attacks on DEI. We really do need to band together. That said, it remains the case. Just over 50%, somewhere between 50 and 55%, every single presidential election, beginning in, I think, 1980, between a little over 50 to a little under 55% of white women have voted for a Republican for president of the United States. And that is since 1980. Every single time.
Why?
Okay. I mean, I used to go on your dad's radio show back on the time, and
I'm just feeling guilty because you could be on every week, but I got to divide you up between my show and your show. But I'm gonna have you on this Sunday. All you have to do is say a word. I know she's like, no, that's not what I meant.
No, but I would, your father would say, what was going on with white women voters, and I would say, Reverend, it's racism. And he would say, now, Terry, it can't just be racism. And I'm like, look, I know my people. And to be clear, between 45 and almost 50% of white women do not vote for racism. Okay, they vote for anti-racism. They vote for candidates who are actually trying to make progress in our country. So the women of this country, white women in this country, really are closely divided. But yeah, when you ask white you ask white people in a poll, is racism against Black people a problem? Well, far more white people say no, it's not a problem than everybody else, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. And let me just say this. That is not evenly distributed across the entire country. Recall that when Reverend Warner, Raphael Warner, ran for the Senate from Georgia against the former football player, and
Herschel Walker. No,
Herschel
you
Walker.
are blocking him from your. No, she's blocking him from her brain.
I know, that's bad. But Herschel Walker. Yes. Are you ready for this? 60% of white women voted for Herschel Walker against Raphael Warnock.
Why?
Because they don't like the anti-racism parts of what the Democrats try to stand for. And let me say, I am regularly disappointed by Democrats and their failure to stand up really for the Voting Rights Act. They have failed horribly with not standing up for the Voting Rights Act. Democrats have not done a good job at closing the gap in women's reproductive health care, the racial gap in outcomes, right? To this day, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely than white women to die preventable deaths from complications of pregnancy and childbirth. And there's laws in there. Kamala Harris is one of the chief proponents of a law that would absolutely address that, and it has never gone through Congress all the way or been signed by the president. So Democrats are constantly disappointing me, but they're at least better than, and I'm being nonpartisan here, I'm simply saying policies that Republicans promote. My senators, both of them from here in Tennessee, are Republicans, and here's what they promote: health policies that result in unnecessary deaths of women. They promote gun policies that result in unnecessary deaths of children, not just school shootings, but suicides and homicides. They promote these policies that kill people. Why? Well, in the case of guns, it's to improve the profits of the gun manufacturers who have moved to Tennessee in recent years. And on the side of health, it's simply to make an ideological point that women really shouldn't have control over their own bodies. And so they promote these policies that actually result in unnecessary deaths of women. So why do white women continue to vote for politicians that promote these policies? It's because they just aren't on board with everyone having access to democracy and health care.
Okay. I mean, it's just, the pull of whiteness is stronger.
It's yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But but I think that, look, we're mature enough, Terry O'Neill and Janice Mathis, to have that conversation. I don't think we're going to be able to move unless we are able to have these tough conversations. Because we do know, Janice, Terry, some men of all colors who could not fathom a woman being president. Come on. We don't want them to be pastors in churches.
Yeah, that happened.
That happens. That's real.
Yeah.
Most women who come out of seminary have to craft their own ministries. They're not going to get a church. They're not. I don't care what color they are. That's real. Janice, can I get an amen? Oh, Terry, you're not immune.
I was just recalling the time that I flew all the way from Georgia to California to speak in a Baptist church, and I was not allowed to go up on the podium. I had to speak from the lower tier of and I guess I could have walked out, but after going 3,000 miles to get there, I had to say what was on my heart. So I took the lower roster, and it was okay. I don't understand how any woman, black, white, red, yellow, purple, votes for somebody who talks about women and treats women in the way that some of the elected officials do. And I just don't get it. I understand that there is a premium on whiteness. I think that some women are voting what they believe to be their economic interest.
Yeah.
I heard a woman say, if I was for affirmative action, that would be like opposing a job for my husband or my son. And so why would I want to do that? Because my economic security is bound up in whiteness.
That's right.
And the influence of white men in the marketplace. And when I heard that, I had to take a deep breath, because if I think that my mortgage won't get paid unless I vote the way the white guy wants me to vote, that's a tough call, I guess.
Well, then, well, just given that these issues are with us. I'm not saying they're lingering; they're in our DNA. How do we organize? Because right now, I see people doing all kinds of things. Some people are saying, okay, we have to have some more economic blackout days. Some people are even saying that, we're not going to watch the State of the Union. That's a form of resistance. I mean, you can agree or disagree with it, but some people are calling for it. But that's very interesting because, Janice and Terry, you both know that just from our work, your work, Terry, in leadership, your work, uh, Janice, in leadership, and everybody's work with Reverend Jackson, right? And others similarly situated, although in many respects, for this turn of history, he's been a singular figure, right? He was going around talking to people all the time and organizing all the time, which is the point you were making yesterday, Terry.
Yeah. That's the thing about the Montgomery bus boycott that lasted a year. Well, what was going on during that year was a ton of education. It was a lot of conversations. It was on the ground community organizing, talking about, this is about us being able to be on the bus, but it's really larger than that. It's about the schools. It's about our access to, the public playgrounds and the swimming pools. It's about lot more than the bus, but we are boycotting the bus system because we need the bus. We need to be able to ride on the bus in a safe and appropriate and respected way. And that's what we're doing. But you had the opportunity during that year-long boycott of actually educating people and getting the word out beyond your own neighborhood to the rest of the state, to the rest of the South, to encourage people throughout the South who are trying to resist the Jim Crow apartheid system. You get the message out to northern cities. You get the message out to mainstream media. So during that whole year, you're building and building and building. That takes a lot of work. That is really hard to do.
But what kind of work? When you say work, what does that mean?
I mean, literally, you are calling meetings. You are running the meetings. You are talking to people. You are having book groups on new books that have come out to educate people and explain to them what's going on. It's you have to show up at these at neighborhood meetings. Maybe you're building a network of tenants unions throughout the city. I know that in the state of Tennessee, the laws are really bad for tenants. And if you live in an apartment like I do, some people may need to start there, especially when the impact of all of the firings of the federal agencies and the failure of those agencies then to provide the services that are needed, throwing more and more people out of work. We're really going to need at the local level. We're going to need mutual assistance and mutual aid groups to come up. We're going to need community gardens to be created. There's going to be a need for real people, locking arms. And as we build those things, it has to be accompanied with education. And Santita, you and I have talked a lot about. I always bring in the capitalist thing, and I have to tell you, it's been a journey for me to come to the realization that what is happening to us today is the natural progression of American style capitalism. When I say American style, I mean specifically racist, patriarchal capitalism, right? This is where it goes, with only the shareholders matter, only the people. And when we say shareholders, we really mean white men like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. It's not like you and I could ever be a shareholder that would get that kind of money. It's the guys at the top. So all the
and their wives who inherit the wealth, and maybe that's part of the vote, right?
That's part of the vote. Absolutely. This is where the economic interest of white women very much comes in. But the logic of capitalism is first you subjugate half the population. Remember, the wives might inherit that, but what is going to happen to it? They're going to give the power and most of the money to their sons, not their daughters, not in a patriarchal system. And so you get half the population subjugated. And so this creates a culture of subjugation is really kind of okay. I'm doing fine. I'm a white woman. I'm attached to a wealthy white man. It's good. Subjugation is fine. And now the real logic of capitalism is to get the work done, paying people as little as you can get away with. Under slavery, we paid zero wages. That was the purpose of slavery. Zero wages, get the work done with zero wages. Up in Boston, it was not zero wages, but it was very low wages. And you had the policing systems in the South, which were based on keeping slaves under control. And you had the policing system up in Boston, which was based on keeping immigrant workers working for exploitative wages under control, the Irish and Italian mostly. So capitalism's logic is to squeeze down wages and make a product that's as crappy as you can get away with. So you're taking it out of the consumers too. Don't pay any attention to all the trash you're putting into the local river, right? So it's just squeeze everybody to get your profits. What happens when that just goes without any sort of constraint? Is what's happening to us now. And so I think this is a moment when not only do we have to be very aware of people are going to need to be fed in the next year.
Yeah.
And there's going to be real
quite literally.
Literally, yes. And we're going to need to have medics. We're going to have train up people to be some kind of medics. People are losing their Medicaid and healthcare. There's going to be all that need for services to be provided. And as we provide those services, we need to be educating people about exactly why government is no longer there for them and what the oligarchs are doing to us and what we can do to take our country back from the oligarchs.
See, Janice and Terry, Janice first you, I'm now getting calls during the week from some people I went to school with, right? They're professional. They've done well. People I grew up with, they've done well.
Yes.
Very comfortable people. And they're saying, are you still meeting at Push now, right? Yep. Okay, so I know you all are talking about Trump and these jobs. I know you, yes. Okay, I'm going to be there on Saturday. Getting to see them show up.
Yes.
Now, I'm not mad. These people, I've known them. I've loved them, blah, blah, blah. I grew up in the church. I grew up in the civil rights movement. That's not everybody's thing. I respect that. But now it's becoming everybody's thing again, because we're seeing a lot of people who have been comfortable, uncomfortable. And I think that's going to become a very real thing, because Congressman Jonathan Jackson said, wait a minute, the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid cuts, they're here. What they did was they tucked them into the cuts that they're looking for in other departments. That's where you're going to see the cuts. They're not top line cuts. They're buried. But the cuts are coming out of Social Security. They're already there. And we're not even talking about the people who are losing their jobs today. They have until 11:59 today. So the question is, a lot of people are getting buyouts. That money's not going to last them long. What happens to their benefits? Will they get pensions? Right? I mean, will they have health care? And what's happening with the economy anyway? I just saw run across my ticker. The stock market dropped 750 points today.
Oh, really?
Today. They're going to close in about an hour. And so, you got to tell me, well, how do you organize? And Robert, you've seen it too. That's right. He said, well, how about that stock market? It's a lot. What do you say to people now? Do you say anything? Do you say it in church? Do you say it, in our clubs? Do you say it in the sorority meetings? What how do we begin, or how do we continue? Do we direct people to organizations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Direct
and
people.
The other thing that we are doing is being more intentional about our partnerships. We know what NOW stands for. We know what the League of Women Voters has stood for over this past century. American Association of University Women, YWCA. They're organizations that can be counted on to be right on these tough issues. And so we are intentionally building and rebuilding and fortifying our relationships so that we create a sort of a coalition of the willing. Those who understand and know and want to do better, we're invited. We just came back from a development retreat at Amelia Island, Florida. Very swanky place, right?
Yeah.
And there were a few people in that meeting that I hadn't seen in a while and that I was delighted to see. Women of color who are in high ranking roles at Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies who are feeling a little insecure about the title of Chief Diversity Officer or Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, who thought it worth their while to come at their own expense to have a conversation with some grassroots women about organizing. The president of the League of Women Voters was there. We're delighted to have her. I know Christian, delighted to have her. I think it's going to take that sort of intentionality, and sometimes,
Yes.
I hate to say it, but pain can be a catalyst for action.
Yes.
Well, so how do we reach, people who, okay, for example, in the state of New York, 900,000 people didn't vote. And I'm not vote shaming anybody, because a lot of people they feel betrayed, and they have been. So to sit around and vote shame people, and well, votes have consequences. I'm like, you know what? While that is true, you don't need to say that to someone whose family's been blown up in Gaza. Are you serious? How do you say that to somebody? How do you say that to someone, this young girl in Connecticut who graduated, like this young black, she's a Latina. There was some young black kids up in Detroit several years ago. They graduated at the tops of their classes, and they got to college and found out they were illiterate.
That's right. Yeah.
She's suing Connecticut. These kids are suing the Detroit public school systems. So, you got to help me. How do we make cases to them, not just to march, but to organize, to get registered to vote? Because they're looking at us and they're saying, well, who am I voting for? I'm just saying, where do we begin? Because we really, wait a minute. Paula, she's one of my original morning stars. Love you, easy peasy. She said, hey, Santita and guest, how do y'all feel Trump will do on Tuesday's speech to Congress? Well, yeah, what is he going to say? Because he said he was going to drop these egg prices. They are about to be the size of a mortgage.
Well, one thing about Trump, it won't matter it won't matter to him whether what he says is true or not.
Well,
Yeah.
And so as long as he stays with the teleprompter and doesn't go off script, I expect he'll do exceedingly well.
Well, Robert Williams said people are livid. You saw that he said J.D. Vance and his family got run off the rich folks' ski slopes in Vermont, and they went to an undisclosed location. I'm putting it nicely, Robert. You said they were sent into hiding, which is true. And I'm sorry that his family feel vulnerable. I am, because I don't like that. I've been on the other side of that.
Yeah.
That having been said, this is real. People losing their homes. When you see people walking out of USAID offices in tears, white people.
And people are stranded outside the United States without a way to get home.
Oh my God.
They've been terminated, but no plane has been sent to pick them up, and no money has been sent to fly them back home.
Janice, what's worse, they've been told they've got to get home on their own.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's
these people don't make a lot of money.
That is cruel punishment.
Yeah. And may I say there's from the point of view of a racist patriarchal capitalist, that's a good thing to do, right? Why? Because it traumatizes one family, and everybody's standing around observing that family be traumatized. Those people are going to work for lower wages. They're going to be more compliant. They're going to be terrified for themselves. So you do that. You inflict terrible cruelty on some people in order to get more compliance out of most.
And some people will say to those who are affected in that way, that's what you get for working for the government. That's why the government shouldn't matter. That's why I don't vote, because you never get the bargain that you think you're getting when you participate in the economy or in the democracy. That intimidation factor to me is as bad as any of the rest of it.
Yes, absolutely. That's.
But I do think there's a cohort of people in their teens and 20s. I think about the Justins from Tennessee.
Yes.
There's a cohort of those type young folk who are ready to take action, but they could use some guidance, they could use a little strategy. They need to be taken off in the woods someplace. And that's what people don't realize, is that the movement was more intentional than a spontaneous gathering of folk. There were teach-ins and places where you went to learn how to let somebody treat you cruelly in order to make a point. And I think we're going to have to go back to some of those old techniques and tactics.
And
but
you learn
that there's a generation that's ready for that.
But I think that you're right, and because you're absolutely right in that. When I think of Reverend Bevel, because my father came out of that, you were basically sent to school. Everybody who marched, they were taken to school. You were meeting and you were learning not just about how to march, but you were learning why.
Right.
Because I didn't even realize that in the 60s, Black kids who were in public school were in what they call the Willis wagons. That was the superintendent of schools here. Black kids went to school half a day. Yeah, I was shocked. I said, what? And one of our young leaders at the time, Dwight McKee, who's been a regular on this show, he said, oh, no. You went to school from 8 to 12. Other kids went from 12 to 4. And you were in these, I guess they would be like trailers.
Yes. We had them in the South too.
See, I didn't go, I went to a public school, but I didn't go to that kind of school. I went to a school that was very small.
They were overcrowded. There were 40 students in the class. The teachers were doing their dead level best. But the disparities were stark and readily apparent.
Well, Cynthia McClendon wants to know, she said, so Miss Santita Jackson, what would you think should be done about Trump and Musk? What are your ideas? Well, let me, very quickly, I will say this. One of the things that I hear Congressman Jonathan Jackson say, he and Congressman Cleo Fields from Louisiana have started the DEI caucus, Attorney O'Neill and Attorney Mathis. He said, first of all, we need to acknowledge that we are not working for Elon Musk, who's unelected, let alone President Trump, who was. He said, we are co-equal partners in the government. It's a tricameral form of government. You need to call 202-224-3121 and call these Republican representatives, especially, I don't care what state you're from, what state they're from, you need to let them know that business as usual is not going to work. They are going home now to town hall meetings where they are being attacked by people who voted for them, not physically. They're going home to chants of do your job, do your job. I did not expect to lose all these jobs. What are you doing? That's what you have to do. First, hold these people to account. We're not powerless. We can move the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. You can do it, but you've got to start calling. You have to do your part. No one's going to snap their fingers and do anything. It doesn't work like that. I know you were not implying that, and I didn't infer that, Cynthia. But I'm saying start calling. That's the first thing you can do, and get your friends to do it. Get like a group of 2, 5, 10, and then 20, and then everybody else get 5 friends. And you all target a couple of representatives to call. If you start there, because every phone call that you make to a representative, they calculate as X number of voters. Trust me, they respond. They do. Carrie?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. They do. And the most important piece is, as you're making your call, you're learning about the specific issue that you're calling about. And the more you educate yourself about these specific issues, the more powerful you are when you get on the phone and say, hi, I'd like to talk to, Senator Blackburn's staffer who is working on whatever. And you have to know, it's very easy to find out what committees your senator sits on. And so if Marsha Blackburn sits on the finance committee and has a view over, financial institutions, then I'm going to call and say, I'd like to talk to the staffer that works on the senator's XYZ committee work. And I want to urge the senator to take a look at this aspect of financial regulation. I'm concerned that Elon Musk has gotten his hands onto deeply private and personal information, people's bank account numbers, their routing numbers, and that they can turn on and turn off this stuff. And I'm hoping that the senator will be calling for an investigation. She's the chair of the subcommittee of blah blah blah. The more you do that, that kind of a phone call that is actually backed up by real knowledge is noted, especially by the staff. And so if you get 5 people with that same type of script, right?
Oh yeah.
And in order to do that, you really have to have people who are doing what Janice just said. We have to be educating people, teaching them, schooling them, like you were talking about. We're going to have to go back to those strategies of bringing people into real learning environments. This is what's happening to us. This is why it's happening to us. This is what we need to do to get to where we want to be.
Attorney Janice Mathis, what do we do? It's like, passing the wire, right? When you whisper in someone's ear, when someone else whispers, because people want to do something, but they need to know what to do and how to do it.
I would encourage people to talk to others, come out of the silos. You could be on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok and feel that you're talking to 5,000 followers or whatever it is. But those folk are not ordinarily going to be motivated to do something beyond talk about it and share photographs of it. The American Federation of Teachers, another great ally of ours, is having a day of action on March the 4th. Find a public school that you care about and go to that school and let them know that you expect children to be educated so that they can take care of themselves. Do something, I guess is what I'm urging people to do. Talk to people you would not otherwise talk to. Join a group. You say, well, this civil rights organizations don't do that. Find one that you can believe in and become active in it. Get to know what they're about and why. That's what we need at this hour. And for folk who are in the business, like Terry and I are, and like you are, Santita, we've got to reach beyond what's comfortable. We've got to build alliances beyond our own tribe in order to get past this moment.
Well, let's kind of dwell on that for a minute. I only have about 5 or 6 more minutes because we all have gotten siloed, right?
Yeah.
And that's not going to work. I mean, we have got to come out of our tribes because everybody's getting hit in one way or another.
Right.
How do you encourage people to do that? Because now you have many people, who are saying, well, you didn't help me in 2024, so I'm not going to help you in 2025. And see, this is what you get for voting this way. Yeah, I mean, we're hearing so.
Well, now let's be clear.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. If the vote had not turned out the way that it did, we would not be trying to hold on to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Yeah.
We would not be suffering losses in terms of reneging on promises to do away with student loan debt or forgive some of it. I can't countenance a point of view that says we're worse off than if we had voted in another way. Yeah, the stock market is down. I don't like it because I'm getting ready to retire.
Right.
And I need every penny to stay right where it is right now. But having said that, this is not a time when we can afford to be selfish and I think about black men, and I actually said this to the Democratic members of the United States Senate 3 years ago. They asked me what I thought the salient issues would be at that time for the 2022 campaign. And I had mentioned immigration. And the Democrats in the room sort of looked at me like, why are you bringing that up? Because black men without sufficient education really are penalized by immigration. They really are in competition for low wages. They really do. And by the same token, this is where education comes in. Do you know that if you have one semester of post-secondary education, the odds of your ever being incarcerated go down to virtually zero?
Wow.
We should be paying people to go to school and stay in school.
Oh, yeah.
instead of making it more difficult for them to do so. I could go on and on, but I've got a call I gotta take now, and I'm so delighted that you called me to come on, and I hope you'll invite me again.
Well, you have a standing invitation. You know that. Well, I'm going to give you. Is there anything you'd like to say before you go?
I would like to say visit me at ncnw.org or visit me at Janice L. Mathis at anything, because if you put in Janice L. Mathis, I will come up. But think about if it's the NAACP or NOW or Legal Women Voters or Rainbow Push Coalition, get in union, or an activist church, an activist congregation.
Mm-hmm.
There is power in numbers, there's strength in numbers, and that's what we need at this hour.
What about your radio show?
I'm not doing the show anymore. It's on
What?
hiatus. Perhaps once I retire, I'll have more time to devote to it. And Avery will be done with her dissertation and she can be our producer.
Well, that's right. And get her on the air. How about that part?
Avery's my niece, Terry.
Excellent. That's
She's
excellent.
now the boss of me and her mother. She's in charge of us now.
I'm so sure.
I'm so old. I remember when she was born. Now she's doing a dissertation. Oh my gosh. Oh,
And guess what she's writing about, Santita? I have to
What?
brag a little bit. She's writing about Black women political influencers on the internet and whether or not they're being listened to appropriately.
wow.
Great subject.
And she
Okay.
had explained it to me 2 or 3 times before I understood it, but finally I think I got the gist of it.
Well,
She's
you
in
know, it
Howard.
takes a
She loves
moment.
it.
It takes a moment, but she's a brilliant and beautiful young woman. And then she gets a lot from her mom and from you. And I just thank God for you and Attorney Terry O'Neill. Terry, your final word before we go?
I just want to reiterate, find a local group. They're all over the place. Go online. You go online to type in, if you live in Nashville, go online and type in Nashville plus social justice plus organization, right? You will find something, and then start looking into them and finding out what works for you. And if you find one, even if that one doesn't work for you, you're talking to the people. They're probably engaged in more than one organization. Right, like me, I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Nashville, which does social justice work. I'm also a volunteer with Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, which is a coalition of faith organizations and unions. So I found it through my Unitarian Universalist Church, but I am doing work both in the church and in NOAA, and through that experience, I have reached out to. I've met two people, both retired, who are very engaged in doing voter education and civic engagement and civic education around this is how you vote, this is what you need to know. And one of them actually, like 5 years ago, went to the courses, took all the courses, and became an election worker, a poll worker. So she's deeply knowledgeable about how voting works in Davidson County, Tennessee. What I'm saying is, get out, put down your phone, put down the social media, and go local. And you'll find someone. It may take a few months to find the thing that really clicks with you, right? So there's probably a Democratic Socialists of America chapter somewhere near where you live, wherever you are. Just go find the people that would work best for you. And start getting active, because this is we're only at the very, very early stages of what Musk and Trump are doing to us right
Oh
now.
my gosh. I
And
mean,
yeah,
the oligarchy, they've been planning this for a minute, and now this is their opportunity, and they found that hole and they are running through it. And you know what? Before we go into the next hour, everyone wish our morning star Paula Garcini Zipser happy birthday. Love you, my sister.
happy birthday.
Woo, we love you, Paula. Paula, happy birthday. Happy birthday. That's all right. Hey, my girl, happy birthday. Sending you so much love. You know what? We're going to be talking about the importance of Selma in the next hour.
Excellent.
The Selma to Montgomery March. Why is it important? Why is it that we keep drilling down on voting rights? Voting rights are the pathway, the portal through which you must travel in order to get every other right. If you do not have voting rights, you are not a citizen. Long story short, there's a reason that our freedom, our citizenship, and voting rights, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment are tied together.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have one without the other. Slaves can't vote. Citizens can't vote. Citizens can't vote. But if you're free and if you're not enslaved, you can vote.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what happened in Selma. Come on, everybody, to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show, sending Attorney Terry O'Neill so much love.
Thank you for having me. I would really love to do this, Santita.
I know, you're part of the family. You know, I love you.
All right, my dear. I'm going to run. Gotta go get my doggy. And
you much love, because we have to do this. We have to organize.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Happy
thank
birthday, Paula. AM 950 Radio, the voice of Progressive Minnesota. Back in just a moment.